So Jayson Tatum had himself quite a night last night as he put up 20-something points on really good efficiency against the Thunder. And then after the game, Paul George said that Tatum is a star, doesn't play like a rookie, all those nice things. And I would agree with Paul George. I think Tatum has been a bit better than a lot of people thought he was going to be entering the NBA. And so now I actually want to bring up the idea of Paul George potentially being a really good comparison for Jayson Tatum. I think when you look at their physical profiles, Paul George 6'9", Tatum 6'8", similar in weight. Paul George has about 15 pounds on him, according to Basketball Reference at least. But he also has like 7 years on Tatum as well. And I think Tatum being a better athlete as well as a better shooter than a lot of people thought he was going to be, and as well as a defender, I should say, I think that kind of opens up the comparison between these two, and we'll dive into it here. And I think a lot of it has to do with his shooting, specifically his three-point shooting, because coming into the NBA, people thought he was going to be more of a mid-range, Rudy Gay, Carmelo Anthony kind of guy where he likes his isolations, he likes the 15 feet, post-up, face-up, jab step kind of game, and he's been really good at keeping that side of his game kind of disciplined to where he doesn't slow down the offense that often, really. And a lot of the time, he's more content with moving the ball around and being a part of an offense and setting screens and cutting to the basket. And as a result, I think Tatum's stock as a player has increased. I think you can couple all that with his three-point shot has been really impressive. Now, in Brad Stevens' system, wings are able to get themselves some open three-point looks, right? Kyrie Irving's driving inside or whatever. You got to bring help, and sometimes you bring it off of Tatum. But to his credit, he still has shot 43% from outside on about 3 attempts a game. And so suddenly you see this guy who is okay with not having the ball in his hands all the time, spacing the floor, shooting three-pointers. That seems like a way more valuable offensive player, if you ask me, than the guy that Tatum was potentially going to be coming into the NBA, where it might be a more awkward fit. Now, if we can get to those isolation abilities, I think it's a good sign that Tatum is comfortable enough to do those things when he has to do them, but he doesn't go to them that often. I mean, we saw in Summer League, there were times when he would take guys in one-on-one situations and a couple crossovers, a step-back three, or some variations of between the legs or behind the back or hesitation moves, whatever it may be. Tatum's got a lot of moves in his arsenal, but he's smart enough to realize he doesn't have to go to it all the time. And I think that is kind of difficult for some guys to pick up, But when there have been situations that called for it, maybe the ball ends up in Tatum's hands with 6 to 7 seconds left in the shot clock and there's nothing really going on, or he has a mismatch on him, or just the couple times that Brad Stevens has actually just told him, hey, go do an ISO or something. I think he's shown enough good signs against NBA defenders to where you can say he's going to be a plus 17, 18 point scorer. I mean, I think it's fair to think that Tatum can be a 20 plus point per game guy in the NBA, because if you have the ability to beat guys off the dribble and get to the free throw line, because I think that's going to be more prevalent for him as he gets older. I mean, the Celtics have a very structured offense, and he's a rookie, and he's playing behind Kyrie Irving, and I mean, even next season, he's going to be behind Gordon Hayward in terms of usage and shots and all that. So I don't know when we're really going to see him, quote-unquote, unleashed to the point where he can just drive to the basket whenever he wants to. But he is still getting to the line for 3 free throw attempts a game, which I think is pretty good given that he is... I don't know where he is in terms of the pecking order on this team. I mean, if we're just looking at shot attempts, of course, Kyrie Irving is number 1, and then after that, I mean, Tatum ends up at number 4 behind, or actually number 5, I should say, behind Horford, Marcus Morris, and Jaylen Brown. Then you're going to put Gordon Hayward in there next season. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, if he was on the Bulls, for example, then Tatum would be going a little more crazy. But anyway, I think what I'm attempting to get at with all this is when he's in his prime, or maybe not even in his prime, we'll just fast forward a couple seasons and he's on the Celtics team, he might be one of those guys where the efficiency is a little insane, like Otto Porter style insane, although I think Tatum has more abilities off the dribble than Porter does. And so the box score stuff might not look as good. Like he might only put up, 16 a game, but it'll be like a super efficient 16 a game. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, I don't really know. Although then again, now that I think about it, it's not so ridiculous for 3 guys on an NBA team nowadays to average 20 plus points a game. I mean, you could see Kyrie Irving putting up his 26 or so a game, Gordon Hayward putting up around 19, 20, and then Tatum doing basically the same thing. And then the Jaylen Browns of the world will, be at a little lower thing. I think that's fair to think, especially with a Brad Stevens offense with so much movement and passing and all that stuff. But the next thing I want to get to with Tatum is his defense. I mean, I focus mainly on offense there, and he's good. Defensively, I think he has a lot of potential to the point where, like, does he approach a Paul George kind of comparison? Well, I think his defensive instincts in his rookie season, I think they honestly could use some work. It's weird. It's like, in terms of the ability to know how to play defense, like knowing assignments and all that, I do think Tatum needs some improvement. Not to say he's bad. I think he's better than the average rookie in that sense, but he could get better nonetheless. But what he really makes up for in not all the way knowing what to do all the time is that he's a big dude. He's 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. He's pretty damn athletic, more athletic than I think people thought he was going to be coming out of college. And he really cares about playing defense. His arms are always stretched. He's always moving as fast as he can. He always has his head on a swivel. I think he's a pretty okay one-on-one defender. And I think that's a really good sign for someone who actually just turned 20 years old. Is if you just care about defense, that tells me that he's going to be in the film rooms. He's going to be doing whatever defensive drills you would end up doing. And I think he can grow into a pretty damn good defensive player. Now, as for the Paul George comparison, I mean, Paul George is potentially the defensive player of the year this season. Can Tatum get to that level? Well, we have to remember that Paul George is also, how old is he? Paul George is 27, okay? He's got 7 years on Jayson Tatum. If we look at where Tatum is right now, fast forward 7 seasons, can he be up to that level on defense? I think it's a fair conversation, but I do have a little bit of hesitance. Now, can he be like a level a little below that? Yeah, because that's still, like Danny Green levels of defense, which is really damn good nonetheless, right? I mean, a guy who can defend a few positions, probably having more defensive versatility than Danny Green does, right? I would say Tatum can defend point guards, shooting guards, some small forwards. He is kind of thin. He's 205 pounds. You could get some more weight on him. And some power forwards. I think that's still pretty valuable as a player, right? And then you look at a guy who can be a 20-plus point scorer, very efficient from everywhere, create sometimes for himself, but also play within a team system really well, and then be, definitely an above-average defender and potentially a very good one. That's a hell of a player, if you ask me. And I think I alluded to it a little bit with defending multiple positions, but I think Tatum could play the power forward spot. I don't know how much he's done it for the Celtics this season. A lot of the time it's been either Horford or Marcus Morris at the 4. Well, according to Basketball Reference, Tatum has spent 23% of his time on the floor this season as a power forward, so that's something for you. And actually, that brings me to the other thing that I forgot about him is his rebounding. I think he could be a really damn good rebounder. He shows a lot of willingness to grab boards. He's at 5 rebounds a game right now as a small forward. And I think if he plays sometime a power forward as well, I mean, one, he just fits into what a lot of teams are looking at the 4 spot in terms of just spacing the floor out more often. But then you can just help out on the boards. It's always a good thing, right? And I guess the one thing I can group in with all of this is he is a better athlete than I think was advertised coming out of college. Whether he got in better shape, lost weight, I don't really know. But I remember when people were talking about him, the scouts were saying, he's athletic, but I wouldn't freak out. But I think he's been better than that this season. So he just basically shattered all the expectations that were there for him, right? He's been a better player than people thought. And now I think it's fair to expect that he's on a really good path. And certainly the team and coach around him are helping him out in that. Anyway, that'll do it for Jayson Tatum. Ultimately, do I think he's the next Paul George? I think he's definitely in the ballpark. We'll just have to see what happens.